Thank you Squarespace for sponsoring this video. So it seems like a lot of people enjoyed the first part of the Oda foreshadowing video, so here we are with part 2. And this is where we go through some of the best foreshadowings in the story that in hindsight it's like, obviously, but at the moment it was like, it really wasn't clear. But if you're here for the first time, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Videos like this will be coming more and more, so if you like things like this, stick around for more, okay? Drop a like as well and turn on post notifications. But without further ado, let's start with the Oda foreshadowings. So the first one is time travel. What first seemed like an inconsistency, it turned out to be foreshadowing for a pretty big plot twist. So when we look at the pieces, Nekomamushi and Inuyasha are in a feud and they haven't seen each other in years, chapter 816. Yet it is implied that they started fighting because of what happened to Odin, chapter 817. But then it says it's only been a few months since what happened to Odin, also chapter 817. Which then it takes us to this, because in chapter 819 we find out that Inu and Neko, they were the closest of friends a long time ago when Pedro and Wanda were still kids. And using the previous interactions, it is heavily implied that their feud started with Odin's death, which was confirmed that he died in chapter 818, which directly means that Odin died when Pedro and Wanda were still kids. And if he died 20 years ago, then how was Momonosuke, who's only 8 years old and vividly remembers his father? Yet by going with what Neko said in the previous panel, he died a few months ago. There is a clear contradiction here. And then we can't forget about chapter 820. In the community at this point, no one believed what Momonosuke was talking about, because Roger died so long ago. What was he actually saying? A lot of people speculated it to be Ace, but no, Momonosuke actually met Roger. So as we entered Wano, the inconsistencies piled up until exactly 100 chapters since the question first arose. In chapter 919, Oda dropped his reveal that explained everything in retrospect. And that was because most of the individuals crossed through time and traveled 20 years into the future. Squarespace is an amazing online platform in which you can create your own beautiful website. Here you can create a community with fully integrated interactions through comments and likes, where you can connect with your audience through gated members only content, along with email communications and leveraging audience insights. There are awesome tools to help you manage inventory, reconciling, and even bookkeeping. It can even automatically push website content to your favorite social media channels so your followers can share it too. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and whenever you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/B.D.A. law to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Next, we have Lola's Vivre card. So this could be an exception because it's something that can be picked up on the first watch, but it's such a long-term plot point. It's something cool we can talk about. So, in chapter 49, Lola gives Nami a Vivre card. One, we got the reveal that Lola was actually born in a new world. She said that her mother was a famous pirate. And then in chapter 835, 346 chapters later, we find out that Lola's mom is actually Big Mom. That's something that was speculated for a while, and there was also another pirate that people thought was Lola's mom, but we're not going to talk about that. Well, if you really want to know, the pirate was Elmi, and she was an allied captain of the Whitebeard pirates. And a lot of people said, well, she could have been Lola's mom because she should be a strong pirate in a new world. It wasn't Elmi. Next, we have Smile Fruits. So, in chapter 504, Doflamingo tells Disco to forget about the slave business because it's no longer as profitable, and today is the age of smiles. For those doubting whether or not he actually meant the Smile Fruits, the word smile is written out in quotations, and the pronunciation in Japanese was sumairu, even in the Japanese raw version, just like how it's used now. In chapter 689, the Smile Fruits were introduced, and now in Wano, we see the effects of them and how Doflamingo was conspiring with Kaido, going back to the Punk Hazard factory. It all comes together, and that's definitely what Doflamingo was talking about. Next, we have Ace and Sabo. So, in chapter 157, Ace has a tattoo and is shown. Well, with the tattoo, we had ASCE, but the S was crossed out, but we didn't know what that meant. In chapter 587, we find out it's either Sabo's Jolly Roger, or just the S is crossed out to show Sabo's death. Either way, it's a memento of Sabo who was introduced way later, and for those saying it's just a design choice unrelated to Sabo, after the flashback in chapter 596, Oda drew a what-if cover with all three of them grown up, and in that timeline where Sabo is alive, Ace does not have the signature S in his tattoo. Plus, in chapter 558, when the sake cups are first shown, if you look very closely, you can make out a third sake cup, which belonged to the third brother Sabo, and it's a bit clearer in the anime. Next, the Country of Dwarves. So, Usop and Norland, both known for their excessive lives, mention the Country of Dwarves, and it's funny in retrospect because not only did the dwarves heroes actually end up praising Usop, but they viewed him as Norland's descendant. The only two people to ever mention the dwarves beforehand in the story become sworn heroes of the dwarves. Usop mentions them in chapter 24. Where he was talking to Kaya, she asked him about the goldfish. He said, "I cut it up into pieces and brought it to the land of the little people, where they are still eating it to this day." In chapter 292, Nolan is telling a story to the villagers, but they could never believe that they were true because of how extravagant the stories were. But then, the existence of dwarves were confirmed in chapter 501. And then the official reveal came in chapter 711. Yeah, that panel and moment with Robin and the cleavage and stuff. Next, we have Usop's lies. So, speaking of Usop, there's a weird gag going on with him, where honestly, one by one, his lies he's told before are becoming true. It's really odd. So, in chapter 24, there's a mention of a giant goldfish with island-sized poop. And that's when Usop was talking to Kaya, and he said those things about a giant goldfish, again, with island-sized poop. The same goldfish appears in chapter 129. And in that chapter, Usop says, "A giant goldfish? I feel like I've heard of that before." In chapter 24, Usop also says he saw a legendary mole burrow under the mansion, so he went searching. In chapter 183, Miss Merry Christmas, she ate the Mogo Mogo no Mi and she became a human mole. Usop also lies about seeing a Cerberus. In chapter 444, Usop is then being chased by an artificially made Cerberus. Usop lies about seeing a dragon. In chapter 655, Usop then sees an artificially made dragon. Notice the recurring theme of Usop always being there to see his lies become truths. This may be a bit of a reach, but in chapter 23, Usop introduces himself as the Great Pirate Captain. In chapter 331, Usop mentions the ship always belongs to the captain. Now after Usop quits the crew, Luffy gives him the Going Merry, and now in chapter 334, Captain Usop of the Going Merry is all alone. The ship always belongs to the captain. The next foreshadow comes from One Piece chapter 124. This tea is really delicious. So, if you've been in the community for a while, this is probably a cover that you've seen because this was floating around everywhere after Sanji was revealed to be a Vinsmoke. Why? We felt like it told the entire story about Sanji without actually saying anything. But in hindsight, it is so impactful. We see Sanji in the cover story and he seems like he's trying to board or get a ride towards his destination. He also has a suitcase that has the secret on it. And we also can't look past Suru that's on the sign in front of us. So what does this all mean? One, Sanji has the secret. And the secret at that time, well, we didn't know Sanji was a Vinsmoke. Suru, of course, she's the Vice Admiral. She was originally stationed in the North Blue. And it seems like that's the direction Sanji was going back to with the secret. Also, this tea is really delicious. For pop culture, that could have a different meaning, but in the context of the story, this could be a direct callback to Big Mom and the Tea Party. So in many ways, this cover tells a lot about Sanji. Now this is another one that's pretty sad to talk about, but this is one foreshadowing people think Ace's death. So, in One Piece chapter 520, The Gorgon's Eye, we got a color spread, and a lot of people feel like this foreshadowed Ace's death because of the contents of the color spread. So it seems like the Straw Hats are just playing cards, like a very innocent cover spread. But when you look closer, there are details that could scare you. So we have to look at the cards in Luffy's hand. In his left hand, he has a card with Brook's face on it. In his right hand, the card right at the top is the Ace of Spades. And in third, you can look at Luffy's face. The correlation everyone has been making is that, one, Brook's card, that symbolizes death. Then the card in his right hand, that symbolizes his brother, Ace. Then third, the face Luffy's making is almost the exact replica of the face he made after Ace died. There's also the fact that the Ace of Spades in a deck of cards could be considered a card of death, but then there's also the fact that Ace was the captain of the Spade Pirates. It's almost scary when you think about it. Next, we have the first time CP0 was actually revealed in chapter 595. This is right before the time skip happened. Doflamingo is having a conversation with someone wearing a hat. Now, this hat, in hindsight, when you think about it, makes so much sense, and based on the dialogue as well, how did we not get this? So Doflamingo says to this person, "When did you become my boss? I don't care how much pull you have with the government, I'm a pirate. That has nothing to do with me. If I lose interest in our little deal here, I can quit being one of the 7 warlords anytime. Don't you forget that." This is perfect because we know CP0's involvement in Dressrosa, but then given the context of the situation, this person has a lot of pull within the world government, he's giving orders, and also the hat. More than likely, this person is definitely a member of CP0. Now, probably one of the best foreshadows ever in One Piece revolves around Sabo, and where we think is Sabo's first appearance. So remember, Dragon in chapter 100, we saw him save Luffy from being killed or captured by Smoker. In chapter 98, there's a panel where it says there are 3 wanted individuals in this square. If you look close enough, you see someone with a top hat that looks a lot like Sabo. Remember, back then at this time, Sabo still has amnesia. So even if he sees Luffy, he probably wouldn't recognize him. Though one would say if you see Luffy, something could trigger, but no. But if you look at it, it looks just like Sabo. Then if you go to chapter 99, there's a panel with Buggy and the person right in front looks a lot like Sabo or is wearing Sabo's attire. This is not coincidence. Again, Dragon is already in Logtown. It makes a lot of sense that Sabo was with him. I think this is probably the best or one of the best foreshadowings in One Piece, period. And shout out to the fans for even catching it. But guys, give me your thoughts. How did you feel about these foreshadows? Do you enjoy these types of videos? If you do, we can definitely make more because there's so much out there in regards to One Piece that we don't know or things that we probably missed. So again, give me your thoughts. Make sure to like the video if you did. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Follow me on Twitter at BragoDAce. Follow me on Instagram at BragoD.Ace. Thank you to my patrons. I appreciate you guys so much. Guys, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
I start doubting me, I felt lost. I rewrite